Hi, welcome to the DanCan Show, where I love what I do and I do what I love, and so should you. This is the show where we dive into how to provide, protect, and promote. We do that with the roles that are given to us, and those primary roles are as husbands, as fathers, as business owners, and leaders. This is a show where we dive into those concepts, provide, protect, promote, and we look to do that on how to live a life and operate a business biblically, Christian principles. So we talk about the word, we talk about the market, we talk about business. We also believe that we want to invest in ourselves, others, and real estate. And real estate is passionate, definitely a passion of mine. Residual income businesses is definitely a passion of mine. If this show had a title, which it does, it is this: Can a book and a relationship change your life? That's the question at hand. Can a book and a relationship change your life? I think you might know the answer. We're going to dive into what I would like to say a segment we'll probably do every 4 or 5 episodes, which is this: what is Dan Can reading? Yes, I'm a big reader. I hope you are too. I am going to give a variety of books that I believe that every leader should read. I am not going to give the book that changed my life until the end. So for those that you have that have the perseverance to hold out until the end, I will gladly share that with you. Why is reading important? We're all very familiar with this saying, hopefully, and if not, welcome to it. It's this: leaders read and readers lead. I'm going to say that again. And if you have a pen and paper, I'd write that down. Leaders read and readers lead. Fun little saying that really has some very impactful things to it. Why is reading important? For one, if you're a believer, we are to read the Bible. Why do you want to read the Bible? The Bible tells us about God, it tells us about us, and it tells about us and God together. We can learn from the Bible in a lot of different ways, but most importantly, we can learn about God and his desires for us. In the marketplace, we are to shine. It says in Colossians to take advantage of every opportunity to, and also in Colossians, it talks about praying that doors would be open. Now, how would you know that if you didn't read the word, right? And so I actually have my Bible here, and I want to read a verse that I believe is very important to this topic. And that verse, I'm going to grab it right now. Going to put on my trusty glasses here. That verse is Proverbs 1. And Proverbs 1 reads this: The Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, for attaining wisdom and discipline, for understanding words of insight, for acquiring a disciplined and prudent life, doing what is right and just and fair, for giving prudence to the simple, knowledge and discretion to the young. Let the wise listen and add to their learning, and let the discerning get guidance. For understanding proverbs and parables, the sayings and riddles of the wise. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and discipline. Later on in Proverbs 120, it states, wisdom calls aloud in the street. Now, those are very powerful words. And if you think about that, you can hear the Lord's heart. Learn from me, learn from others, be wise. When you read, you have the opportunity, whether it's in the Bible or other books, you have the ability to listen to someone else's wisdom. What I love about Proverbs 1 here is it talks about a disciplined and prudent life. I don't know about you, but I don't see that marketed all over the internet right now, or billboards, or TV, or radio, or songs. You don't hear a lot of songs about a disciplined and prudent life. But I know from personal experience that when I express those things, when I act on those things, discipline and prudence, man, I feel blessed. I have peace. Now, this is a podcast about leadership. And so, if we want to give leadership to the people that are following us, we need to have wisdom on how to do that. I believe the Bible is the place to start. Obviously, Proverbs is the book of wisdom. It has promises and warnings and situations in which we want to learn from. When wisdom cries aloud from the street, it's saying that we have an opportunity to grow every day. We have an opportunity to grow in every situation. Why do you want to read your word? You want to read your word to know him and to be known by him. Let love and faithfulness never leave you. Proverbs 3 3. I love that verse. Let love and faithfulness never leave you. He has been so loving and faithful to me. I want to then now give that to others. Another part of the Bible that I want to read here is John, in the book of John in the New Testament. And it says this: in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. That's so powerful. And the reason it's powerful is because words matter. And when you read the word and you hear the stories of what God has done and what he will do, we can carry that wisdom, that message of hope to others. I believe that if you have a good Bible and a good commentary, you can be a good man. And that's if you obey. And now we live in a society that really doesn't enjoy that word obey. But I know that when I obey the word, when I obey his wisdom, when I desire to have a disciplined and prudent life, the people that are following me oftentimes are blessed. Not always, but oftentimes are blessed. And so that would be my encouragement for us for this first section of the podcast today is, hey, read your word. You know, these other books I'm going to talk about, they're written by men, right? We're fallible. We make mistakes. God, he's perfect. And so when we read his word, we can hopefully grab a little bit of that perfection. And we know the Bible says, be perfect as your Lord is perfect, as your God is perfect. And so that's what I believe the first book is that we should focus on. I'm going to dive into after this short break, I'm going to dive into the business books that I believe every businessman or woman, every leader should read. I'm going to introduce the books, so please have a pen and paper and you can write these books down. And I'm going to give a very short synopsis overview on why I believe they should be in your library. If you obviously look over my shoulders here, you can see this is actually the smallest library that we have in our house. We have an actual whole library in another room that maybe someday I'll show you. But in our family, the Cantillanas, we definitely love reading. After this short commercial break, we're going to come back and I'm going to give those overviews and those book names. But before we do that, a quick word from our sponsors. Hey, welcome back. Okay, so if you've listened to any kind of podcast or watched any kind of YouTube and you have an entrepreneur on there and they talk about books, typically the first book they come up with, surprisingly, isn't the Bible, but on this podcast it is. But what they oftentimes say is a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That is a book that I have read. I've actually read it 4 times, and it has been very strategic. That is not the first book I'm going to go over. I actually, when people come to me and they ask for book recommendations and how to get started, the first book that I believe should be in every entrepreneur or every leader's library, it's actually called The Richest Man in Babylon. I thoroughly enjoy this book. I've probably read it at least 7 times. The reason why I really enjoy this book, The Richest Man in Babylon, is because they're fables, they're stories. And within the stories, there's a lesson. There's characters called Arcad and other things. And why that book is powerful to me is because it really opened up my eyes to residual income. It also opened my eyes to the power of compound interest. It opened my eyes to how to save and how to invest those savings. So, The Richest Man in Babylon is what I believe you should read first. A fun little story about The Richest Man in Babylon is we homeschool our kids and we've thoroughly enjoyed it. For one of the students, or my son, he did a business internship with me. And so I asked him to read The Richest Man in Babylon. And he read it, and it was so fun to get this text. He texted me and he said, Dad, and a concept in the book is if you make money, you want your money to have children and grandchildren. And that was their way of talking about compound interest or investing, if you will. He texted me and he's, Dad, I want my money to have children and I want them to have grandchildren because I read the book 7 times. I know what he's talking about. The cool thing about that is he then invested his life savings into a real estate project with us, and he's getting double digit returns. And so every month he gets money and he loves it because he didn't have to do anything for it. What an amazing concept at 18 years old to get that. He continually puts in more. He works a great job making a great hourly rate and also commissions. And so at 18, he's putting that money. And now his fixed costs obviously are very low because he lives at home and he can do that. But my first book would be this, The Richest Man in Babylon. My second book would be, like I had said earlier, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's a wonderful book, definitely tells stories, but it talks about the need and the desire to take control of your career, to take control of your time, to take control of situations, this isn't my favorite term in the whole wide world, but to think outside of the box. I call it be unique, be you. But that is a fantastic book. It's doesn't give a lot of step-by-step details. It's more of principles, and then you can take those principles and run with it. The third book that I would really encourage you to read, and specifically if you are already a business owner, is E-Myth Revisited. E-Myth Revisited. This is about the struggles of being an entrepreneur. This is about how to put systems and procedures and people in the proper places to free you up to be the entrepreneur that you are. Every entrepreneur is different. Some people are really good with the technician work. Some people are really good with relationships. Some people are really good with leadership. This book does a fabulous job of telling his personal story, but then also intertwining a pie maker. And it's really, really encouraging. I know for me, it was a very, very challenging read. I had to look in the mirror numerous times and demote myself from roles that I thought only I could do. And as an entrepreneur, you have that. Only they only want to talk to me and only I can do this. And it's very hard to succeed and scale if you are the only one doing the work. And E-Myth Revisited, it's a classic. It's a fantastic book. I would encourage you to get it. The next book is a book that radically changed my life, and it's a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. And Atomic Habits is a book that really teaches you the value of small gains. Habits definitely can help you succeed or help you fail. We obviously all have good and bad habits. Atomic Habits is a step by step book to really help you. One in particular area that this book has helped me in is in my personal fitness. I will never forget when I first picked up this book. I actually took it from my wife who had brought it to read on vacation, which wasn't the kindest, but hey, it happened. And at the time, I currently weighed about 233 pounds. Now I'm 6'1" with my boots on, if you will. And 233, that's a hoss. That's D1 offensive, a D3 offensive line. Like that's a lot of weight. And I really wanted to lose some weight. And this book helped me really believe in the net positive gains of just get 1% better. And I don't want to take James Thunder here, but that 1% better really changed my life. And as I started it and implemented a lot of its wisdom, I was able to get from 233 to 205, and that's a decent weight for me. And I'm very proud of that. And I've been able to, for the most part, keep that off. It goes up and down. But Atomic Habits isn't just about weight loss, it's about any kind of behavior that you want to change, any kind of habit that you believe will bring you success. I highly recommend it. I've read that book 3 times. And yeah, as you can tell, I read books often because I find when I read it the second and third time, I pick up things that I missed, and it also solidifies the things that I first picked up. And so that's a little life hack: is if you have a really good book, I would encourage you to read it 2 or 3 times because you will solidify what you've already known, and oftentimes you will grow in things that you don't know. Now, These books only work if you read them and you do them. You read them and you have action. And that's what's so important about being a leader is you want to have action. Our principles of provide, protect, and promote. I would file this under provide. You want to provide wisdom to the people that follow you. You want to provide wisdom to the people that love you. I believe you get wisdom by reading the Bible and reading people's work in their books. I call it their life work. And then you want to act on the things that you read. You don't want to just be a consumer, and you want to take that and then move forward and go do something. And obviously, these books, believe me, if you read them and you meditate on it, and you'll have some serious action steps. When we come back, I am going to share the story of the book and the relationship that changed my life. And I hope and pray that you stay to hear it because I hope and pray that you read the book. Before we do that, here's a word from our sponsor. Okay, this book means a lot to me. This author means a lot to me, and this relationship means a lot to me. And so I have to go back a little bit. It was 2008, 2009. And for those of us that were in the marketplace, that was the Great Recession had just started. We were, as a family and a business, we were really in a tough spot. Things were not going well. We had started a couple new businesses, and hey, it just hit the fan and it wasn't going well. I'll never forget this. It was one of those, I used to live in Tacoma, Washington, and it was one of those November, early November, late October nights where it was just cold, it was rainy. I literally was in my office all by myself. It was like 6:30, felt like it was 12 o'clock at night. And they didn't have podcasts back then. What people had to do is they would post audio files on their website. And I was just listening to this guy, and he was being interviewed, and he was talking about the leads and all this other stuff and advertising, and I was just in a bad spot. I actually really wasn't even paying attention to this audio. And then the gentleman said, and I'll never forget this, if you are in business, you need to read the book The Power of Who. And man, I don't know if it was the Holy Spirit or bad pizza or what, but it just rang with me, this book, The Power of Who. I had never heard about it before. And I actually had to go back a couple times to get the author's name and to try to spell it. So I wrote it down, The Power of Who, and it's written by Bob Beaudine. And so hopefully I pronounced that correctly. And I wrote it down. And like I said, I lived in Tacoma. And so I called the bookstore Barnes and Noble in Tacoma, and they said, "Hey, we don't have the book, but we can order it for you." And I just felt like in my spirit, man, I got to get this book. And I called then the Barnes and Noble in Seattle, which is about an hour away from Tacoma, and they had one. And so I said, "Hey," and I remember at this time it's about 6:30. I was like, "Hey, what time do you close?" And they told me, and I said, "Okay, my name's Dan Cantillana. Hey, put that book on hold. I'm coming up." We had just had twins. We had a 3-year-old at the time, and I knew my wonderful wife, Lisa, had been with them all day. And I was like, I can't shoot up to Seattle while she's been with the kids all day. So I literally pack up the twins. They were about a year old. And then I threw Isaiah in the truck. He was about 3, and drove up to Seattle. And man, I'll never forget trying to find a parking spot and getting the stroller out and all the stuff. And I went and I got this book, The Power of Who. I got back home about 9 o'clock, and I couldn't put the book down. I just kept reading and reading. Now I'm a pretty disciplined person. Lights out for me is 10. Like I'm asleep at 10 because I get up around 5 every day. And but that night I stayed awake and I read this book, The Power of Who. And man, it was just right what I needed at the right time. And basically the premise of the book, like spoiler alert, but you're still gonna want to read it, is you already know enough people to help you succeed and flourish in life. They just don't know how to help you because you don't know what you really want. And that just struck with me because I was like, yeah, like I don't communicate exactly what it is in the marketplace that I'm looking to do. And if I don't know that, how can anyone help me? And so at that time, I had owned an Allstate agency and they were great to me and I really enjoyed it. But their underwriting had turned. I was getting a lot of leads, but I couldn't write them because of the underwriting. And so I was referring to this gentleman that I had just met. The elder of my church had introduced me to him and we had just started a friendship. And I couldn't write any of this business. So I would send it to him and he would call me and thank me, and I was sending him like 5 to 25 policies a month, which in the insurance world, that's a lot. And it just stuck to me like, man, I have to meet with him and let him know what I'm about, how he might be able to help me, and then how I might be able to help him. So this book, The Power of Who, it just really streamlines, hey, the importance of relationships and the importance of communicating exactly what it is you're looking for, and specifically in the marketplace. I met with Kevin and we were talking, and I literally was like, hey, man, I want to work where you work. He owned a Geico agency, a Berkshire Hathaway affiliate, and I was like, I want to work here. What do I have to do that? Because your business model is doing really well. Mine is not doing well. I know how to generate leads. I just can't write the business. Well, this relationship and this book radically changed my life. At the time, it was very difficult to get that appointment for that agency. And by God's grace, we were able to do that. Opportunity did arise. Now, I had to take action steps, correct? I had to sell my house. I had to move to another area, 300 miles away from family and friends in our church. I had to find a buyer to buy my Allstate agency because I needed that capital. So I'm not telling you that the book made it perfect, but the book gave me vision, gave me the thrust, if you will, the spirit to be able, like, yeah, I believe the Lord will sell my house. I believe the Lord will find a buyer. Now, this isn't during the Great Recession where, hey, nobody was financing anything. And this was a crazy story. So in Allstate, we had these team meetings and there were different people that I knew and all this other great stuff. And somebody that I was a colleague with, just one day she called me and she said, hey, Dan, I heard you're trying to sell your book of business. I just want to let you know that this company out of Kansas City just called me and they will finance at this loan to value and at this interest rate. I don't know if that contact would help you and Jeff in your transaction. I almost started crying. I was like, man, you cannot believe what a blessing this is to me. She knew what I wanted. I wanted to sell the business. And so she was able to help me with that because I had told her I was going to sell the business. I then took that information, I gave it to Jeff, the buyer, and it all worked out. And why the power of who is so powerful is because it helps you communicate what you really want to be about, what kind of customer you're looking for, what kind of business opportunity, how you can help other people because you become more strategic and wise because you're asking them, hey, this is what I'm about, this is what I'm looking for. How can I help you? What are you about? What are you looking for? Now, this is where it gets really cool. So, this relationship helped me get the agency. And then, obviously, this relationship also got me into real estate, which has been a passion of mine for a little bit. But here's something that's really interesting and how life works sometimes. So, I'm in Spokane. I have a friend here that is in marketing. And we had gone out to lunch and I had told him about this book, How It Changed My Life, Bob Beaudine. This gentleman, he works for a very professional and successful college marketing firm, and they needed a guest speaker. And he went and got Bob Beaudine to guest speak at one of his events. And so they became friends. This friend of mine, his name is Chris, and he's amazing. Thoroughly enjoy Chris. He honestly should be a writer for Saturday Night Live because he is unbelievably intelligent and witty. I love getting his texts about life and business. He's a joy and a dear friend of mine. Bob had asked him, hey, Chris, like, how'd you hear about me? And he said, my good friend in Spokane, DanCan, he told me about you. He loves your books. He gives them out to everybody. And I've given out this book to a lot of people. And Chris, being the unbelievable friend and gentleman he is, my birthday was coming up, and he said, Hey, Dan. Now, this is like 10, 15 years after I'd met Chris and told him about the book. So he said, Hey, Dan, it was on my birthday. Hey, can you be by your phone at 11 a.m.? And I was like, Yeah, sure. So I'm at my phone at 11 a.m. I get a phone call from Bob Beaudine that Chris lined out. And I got to bless Bob and tell him, like, hey, you got to hear this story. And I told him everything I just told you. And he's an author, a speaker. He also has some other business opportunities that he does. And I just got to bless him and say, hey, listen, your book changed my life. This is what's happened. It changed my family tree. Like, we have all these opportunities that we never would have had. And your book helped me clarify my message on how people can help me, what I'm looking for, and how I can ask them how I could help them and what they're looking for. So, just a really fun story on how to provide wisdom and opportunities for others. Like I had said earlier, leaders read and readers lead. As we come to a conclusion, I'm going to tie this all together and have some action steps. But before we do that, a word from our sponsor. Hi, welcome back. DanCan Insurance Agency. Yep, that's us. Hey, I hope you have a pen and paper, and I hope you had written down some of those books. As at the end of this section, we do what I call the Law of 72. If this is the first time you've heard our podcast or YouTube, this is what the Law of 72 is. And I read this in a book, about what, 15, 20 years ago. And it's this: when I go to a seminar or I listen to a podcast that I believe has impact, that I want to move on something, I have 72 hours to take one of those principles or concepts and act on them. We don't want to be consumers. We want to be creators. Okay. We don't want to consume. We want to create. As leaders, we are called to create. And if you don't remember that from the first podcast, number one, jump into that podcast. We talk a lot about how God created us to create, and He allows us and gives us the tools and the operations. And it's really hard to be happy and successful when you're not creating. And you can do that. You can create in so many different ways. So, my question to you is, what is your law of 72 to do? Now, the law of 72 is you want to pick something, a principle, a topic, write that down. You have 72 hours to do it. Hey, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please, if you could, subscribe to this YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast or iTunes or podcasts, all your affiliates, right? And if you could be so kind, if you know somebody who needs a spark of encouragement, some hope, either being a father, a husband, a business owner, or a leader, if you could forward this to them, that would be fantastic. And I love to end our episodes with the same saying, and it's this: love and do good.